Oh, right, so we just won't use
We use one or the other.
Okay. Is it okay if instead of using the clip on, they just speak into this? Otherwise, these two won't work at the same time.
Or should we just not use this?
Yeah, let's use the roving mic and then they speak from here into that.
Yes,
Is that okay?
So the roving mic for any questions in the audience?
Yeah, I'll go around passing that.
Yeah,
Save you some thought.
yeah.
Testing 1 2 1 2.
As you can see from here. You want to come and see? We can drag this for you.
Yeah, so she'll sit here talking to us. I'll copy. Let's see what we got. So we sit up here when we present? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. You can sit, you can stand. It's up to you, obviously. we have only 20 minutes. Henry, you're asking me to speak only 20 minutes on small-scale mining. Ideally. That's I have to control myself, man. Where is it here? This one here. Just put on the desktop or here? In here? Yeah. 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 Can we just open it? This one, yeah. Yeah, it should be alright. Don't worry, lots of pictures. Lots of slides, but most of the pictures. Don't worry, Henry, we'll be fine. If you hold up a sign, this is 2 minutes, I won't mind.
Yeah, she would.
Don't worry.
She has the 5 minutes.
I won't mind her.
Oh. These are the ones that didn't come because of the visa.
Both of them.
questions throughout, or
No, the question is at the
so
end.
after around an hour and a half?
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Will be the first one. Or you can put it there. I will not be sitting here. I'll just have the chance of let me remove this from here. Or you want to see that? Yeah, we'll turn it on for you. Just use this the cursor to do that. It's the last one. Okay, the next thing you can just use this one. Okay, just the down arrow to go down, and the up arrow to go up. Sure. Joanne? Is the mic on already?
Yeah, just try speaking into it. It should be fine to say 1, 2.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. My 1, 2 is not loud enough.
Testing 1, 2, 1, 2.
Try it from here. It should be working.
Yeah.
If you just speak into it, I'll get the back.
Okay.
When I lift my hand, keep moving further back.
Okay. Hello? 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 What's happening to the mic? It's not on. Ah, it's on now.
It should be on, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's come on. I think so. You be okay?
That one here, I think we need. It should be okay. If they can't hear it, I'll call them.
Don't worry, my voice is loud enough. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have to start the session now. I don't know what's happening. The Ghana sessions used to be quite full with the room overflowing all the time. People don't like gold, so they've gone somewhere else. We're going to talk mostly about natural resources. In particular, we're going to talk about gold mining in Ghana. But within the context of natural resource management as a whole. What we've done this afternoon is to bring in some policymakers to first talk a little bit about the issues involved with natural resource management in Ghana. What some of the problems are, what some of the challenges are, and what needs to be done. We thought if we do it that way, not only for the researches that are being presented today, but also that it would give opportunity for other researchers to know the areas that IGC Ghana would want some work done on. So we are very delighted to have two policy makers to do that kind of give us that kind of insight into the issues in the natural resource management in Ghana. We are happy to have the Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources in Ghana, the Honorable Barbara Asamoah. She is the Deputy Minister for Mines and Natural Resources in Ghana. She will give us the first first talk on natural resource management, the issues as she sees it from her desk. Then there is also a desk at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, which looks into natural resource management. And the officer in charge of that desk is a principal economist. Franklin Ashiade will also give us some issues on what, from the Ministry of Finance points of view, are some of the problem areas regarding natural resource management in Ghana. Without much ado, may I call on the Honorable Minister, Ms. Barbara Asamoah, to make her presentation. Thank you. She would have about 15 minutes for presentation, and then Franklin will have about 10 minutes for presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am indeed honored to be invited by the organizers of the Growth Week to be part of this very important occasion, which has brought together important people like you here to do this presentation. And Mr. Chairman, my presentation will mainly focus on small-scale mining in Ghana. Mr. Chairman, mining is one of the major beneficial economic activities in Ghana. This means that as a country, we must ensure that the resources are sustainably managed to lay a foundation for the benefits of present and future generations. And my presentation will take the following form. First of all, talk briefly about the legal framework, the importance of this, and potential that contributes to the socio-economic development, importance of the small-scale mining, the characteristics of small-scale mining, historical context of small-scale mining, the policy framework. Then I talk about the key challenges and some of the questions that we would want to help youth researchers to help us answer. Interventions that have been made so far by government to, sitting so that, okay, so I can speak into the mic. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Interventions that has been made so far by government to address some of these key challenges, how the interventions have fared so far, and then I'll conclude the presentation. Chairman, in Ghana we have a legal framework. We have different types of laws that govern mining, especially the small-scale mining in Ghana. We have the Minerals Property of the Republic, that is Act 703. We have mining activities require mineral rights, that is Act 703 again. And then we have acquiring license for small-scale mining, and then we have qualifications that enables a person to undertake small-scale mining. And here the most important thing is that in Ghana, it is only citizens who can engage in small-scale mining. If you are not a citizen of Ghana, you cannot be engaged in small-scale mining. The rationale behind it is that looking at the people who are engaged in small-scale mining and the amount of money that is required to engage in large-scale mining, it was obvious that the indigenous people of Ghana may not be able to raise the capital to engage in large-scale mining. So government came up with and regularized small-scale mining to enable our own people participate in mining. So, Chairman, globally, small-scale mining is a very significant subsector that provides livelihood for millions of people and has the potential to contribute to the reduction of poverty and stimulate economic growth. In Ghana, small-scale mining in last year contributed to about 23.7 of the gold that we got in Ghana. And then the total diamonds that are produced in Ghana, has been produced in Ghana since 2008, came from small-scale mining. This is as a result of the fact that the main mine that was engaged in diamond production was shut down. And so all the diamonds that come from Ghana since 2008 has come from small-scale mining. It is estimated that about 1 million people are directly involved in small-scale mining in Ghana. And so far, we have issued about 799,000 licenses to people to do small-scale mining. So we have about 600,000 legally operating small-scale mines in Ghana. Then we have the background or characteristics of small-scale mining. It uses intense manpower. It uses low level of technology. It is a significant source of employment, as I've already said. About 1 million people are directly engaged in small-scale mining. It has low production costs and then stimulates local economies. If you go to the areas where small-scale mines are, there are a lot of other economic activities that happen in those areas that are linked to the small-scale mining. In this, you can be looking at food vendors, at artisans who provide them small machines that are required to do these small-scale mining. In all, if you are looking at, if you go to a town or a village where small-scale mines take place, you can be looking at about between 100 and 200,000 people engaged in this activity. It also has the potential to become large-scale mines. As time goes on, a lot of people get involved, and then they are able to turn it into large-scale mining. And then it also involves a lot of stakeholders. You have politicians, chiefs, foreigners, landowners, farmers, businessmen, and laborers. This shows how it employs so many people. In fact, it has been realized that small-scale mining in Ghana employs about 500% more than what the large-scale mines employ. However, we have significant environmental problems associated with small-scale mining. And then we have pollution, unclaimed pits, poor safety and health issues as well related to small-scale mining. We are looking at the historical background or historical context of small-scale mining. Small-scale mining in gold has been in existence in Ghana since the 15th century. But during the colonial era, it was discouraged and actually became very unpopular until the late 1980s, when government decided to regularize the small-scale mining activities as a result of the employment it was creating for our people. Before then, it was a secret activity. And then, so the proceeds that they got from the small-scale mines were smuggled out of the country. So government realized that we're losing the benefits that the country should have as a result of this sort of banned activity. So government decided to regularize the activities of small-scale mining. And that is where the problems actually started. So in 1989, it was mainstreamed, and then we promulgated the small-scale mining law, PNDC law 218, to kind of regulate small-scale mining in Ghana. The regime was integrated into the new Minerals and Mining Act in 2006, Act 703. So now when you take the Mining Act, small-scale mining is also part of it. Some policy that we have undertaken over the years. We have a draft national mining policy that provides for assistance to small-scale miners to improve upon their operations. And then in this way, what we try to do is to provide them with assistance. Government tries to acquire the equipment that they need put them in a pool. So once you are a registered small-scale miner, you can go and rent the equipment that you need, and then after that you return and pay a little fee for it. And actually, this is what has led to the influx of foreigners into our small-scale areas. Because as a result of the fact that government was prepared to provide these assistance, people then sought these assistance from outside. And so they will go and hire equipment like bulldozers and excavators, which are actually not supposed to be used in small-scale mining to engage in the activities. And this has had dire consequences on our environment. And then government also have designated certain areas that has been proven to have gold deposits. We have parceled out these lands to give it out to small-scale miners. Once you have the license, then you have a parcel of land where you can carry on your activities. But people have a belief that in Ghana, you can find gold everywhere, especially in our forest reserves and our water bodies. And so even though we have these parcels of lands that are dedicated to small-scale mining, you will find people all over the place, wherever they suspect that there may be gold, they go there to engage in small-scale mining. So you have a situation where you have somebody holding a license that is supposed to be operating in a district in Western region, and then the person will be operating a place in the upper East region. And when you meet the person, he will tell you that I have license. It presupposes that once he has license to engage in small-scale mining, he can use the license in every part of the country, but it isn't so. Again, government has also ensured the use of appropriate, safe, and affordable techniques in small-scale mining. We have also given some guidelines as to how small-scale mining activities can take place in the country. I have to go fast now. These are some of the limitations that it's not every place that you can engage in small-scale mining, as I've already said. You cannot do mining in forest reserves and cemeteries, museums, sacred groves, and areas earmarked for development. These are the key challenges that we have faced over the years. There's a huge issue with our legal framework. And here, in spite of the fact that small-scale mining has been legalized in the country and you can actually acquire license to operate, many people do not get the license. They just get up and then they start engaging in small-scale mining. So the question is, how do we ensure that there's appropriate licensing regime that will encourage people to do proper small-scale mining? And then the second issue is poverty. As a result of the fact that this activity is linked with the survival of the people, people find this as a very lucrative source of employment. And so it is very, very difficult to handle it. And so the next question is, how do there's a need to provide a balance between their activities and the environmental protection. And so how do we address these challenges? These are some of the land, the environmental issues that we have. And then I'll show you pictures of some of the victims of, and then devastating effects of small-scale mining on our economy. This is a forest that has been turned into, and then mining taking place right in a river. And then, so the Mineral Commission has also had some role to play to ensure that some of these activities are kept. However, we have the EPA, MMDAs, and the national security all involved trying to fight the menace that has come into the small-scale mining. But all these measures so far, these are some of the interventions that government has put in place to check the illegalities in the small-scale mining. But all these interventions do not seem to produce any effective results. So in conclusion, improving the small-scale subsector requires the collaborative efforts of all stakeholders. Whilst there is no single solution in addressing the challenges, deepening stakeholder engagement is key to developing strategies to address them. The extent to which Ghana succeeds in managing these challenges will determine how beneficial mining will be to the country. Therefore, this forum is very, very important to us, the good people of Ghana, to engage you in finding solutions through your research to our problems. Chairman, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank the Honorable Minister for the presentation. You can see why Ghana used to be called the Gold Coast. Almost everywhere on the land you can find some gold. It is said that some fishermen went to sea one day in the central region, and as they got to the shore, they saw some things sparkling in the sand over there. And then they realized that it was gold. They dropped their cable, they dropped their pumps and everything, and became miners. So you can see why we need to study small-scale mining and talk a lot more about mining and gold in Ghana. The next person to speak is Franklin, who is for the Ministry of Finance. He'll be talking from the policy angle.
Yeah, I don't have a PowerPoint, but I would try as much as possible to present what I have here for you. First of all, let me thank the organizers for the invitation. We appreciate this a lot to put the focus of mining, to put Ghana on the program and the focus particularly on mining. I think as all of you are already aware, Ghana is a natural resource country. We have tremendous amount of natural resources. We have oil and gas, forests, gold, and fish. But this generous natural resource endowment has driven sustained economic growth and poverty reduction, and it's likely to continue to do so in the near future. For the past decades, the contribution of the mining sector, in particular, to revenues has been increasing steadily, especially during the rise in gold prices. Revenue to the sector actually increased by several folds, about 913%, and roughly that is about 455% in real terms. And apart from its contribution to revenues, the mining sector also has added value in the provision of jobs and its contribution to the budget. But it's also legitimate to ask why Ghana's large stock of mineral resources has not led to its development in a marked way. In other words, has the mining industry proved to be an effective vehicle for sustainable development for Ghana? These questions, I think, are at the heart of natural resource management in Ghana, which you must confront and with imagination and creativity. There is no doubt that the country has experienced disappointing results in translating our mineral wealth into broad economic development. We have been doing a lot of work at the Ministry of Finance from the EITS Secretariat, and over the period, we realized that, in fact, prior to the gold boom, and even during the boom in the prices, Ghana has not benefited too well from, the gold or the natural resources. Why is it so? It's because of some of the agreements that we have signed. Our mining agreements have a fiscal regime that we entered into actually constrained how much the country should benefit from the resources. We have provided very generous tax incentives to investors. And the question one will ask is, how relevant are those investment incentives and agreements that we have entered into today to the industry? Are they a necessary evil? Government is trying to do some revision on some of these agreements to ensure that we achieve some kind of balance and win-win situation. Our EITA report also revealed that our revenue institutions have very limited capacity to actually monitor the revenues that are coming from the mining sector. They have limited capacity to verify market prices, cost of mining companies' operations, and cash flows, which are cornerstones of accurate profit tax assessment. Now, the effectiveness of which mineral resources are managed for sustainable national development therefore depends upon how responsive the provisions of the minerals and mining laws of the country are. In particular, whether mineral resources will support national development on a sustainable basis will depend on how the resources are exploited, how much harm is caused to other national assets, including the environment, in the process of the extraction, and how the minerals are marketed, and above all, how revenue from the exploitation is applied. The way in which the legislation is framed can either hinder or promote better management of the extractive industries and the revenue therefrom. Now, the effects of the natural resources on economic and political outcomes in countries like Ghana give rise to a wide range of difficult policy questions, not only for government, but also for international community at large. Important policy questions facing us as a natural resource country include the following. How do we achieve fairness in the distribution of the mineral revenues between governments, investors, communities, and even the people who are doing the mining? In other words, how do we ensure that the revenue from the mine is distributed equitably in a way that balances and manages conflicts and concerns both at local and the national levels? How do we ensure that the mining agreements we enter into result in a win-win situation, as I've already mentioned, for all parties, both the investor and the country at large? It's not enough to have a very well-functioning revenue distribution system if the contracts that we sign are not balanced and does not allow for government to capture sufficient taxes and royalties, or if the revenue allocation system is weak. A lot of times, we don't even know how much we have, let alone what price we can put on it. So what are the quantities, and what is the country of the quality of the country's natural resource endowment? Is commercial viability, expectation of future production, and sustainability. The understanding of this will help us address the issue of poverty, inequality, and sustainability. How should the country's mineral resources revenue be used? How much should be saved? And how much should be invested, and in what? These are traditional, natural resource policy questions. For the oil and gas, there has been some attempt to design a framework, petroleum revenue management framework to regulate the use of revenue. But for the mining, we haven't got anything like that, and stakeholders are calling for how we can manage to develop a system which will regulate the use of the money, and that all will not be spent on consumption. The other critical policy question is whether the country should increase its cash flows by borrowing against expected natural resource revenues. Should we mortgage future resource revenues to support deficit spending during economic downturns, as we are experiencing now in the country? How do we ensure that natural resource-based activities are fully integrated into the community development planning in order to maximize their contribution to sustainable livelihoods in areas where these resources are extracted? Our work at the Ministry of Finance, EIT Secretary also revealed that some of these resources that are sent back to the communities are not properly used and accounted for. how do we ensure that these resources that are sent back to communities contribute to poverty reduction and development of those communities? How do we create a viable, integrated, and diversified industry, as well as sustaining the wealth it generates without compromising environmental, social, and cultural consideration, and ensuring that a regulatory framework that encourages wealth production? How do we also address natural resource revenue volatility and its effects in government planning and budget outcomes? So these are some of the issues that we have been grappling with. And the ministry has done some efforts in addressing that, but the lots remain to be done. And we think that as a research body, you can help us think through some of these things. So on that note, I'll end here.
Several policy issues coming up in the two presentations we've had.
It's okay. Just go back. That
Gold
closes.
is a rich resource, but we don't benefit very much from it as you heard on the presentation. We're talking about small-scale mining right now. We're not talking about the deep mining. Small-scale mining. I was amazed to read in today's press from Ghana that a small-scale miner has sued a colleague for fraud because a gold he took to the bank, a 6 kilogram gold that he took to the U.S. and sold for $260,000 has been now misappropriated by his colleague. And I just said to myself, $260,000 for a small-scale miner. I think I'm in the wrong profession. So we'll hear more about small-scale mining. Now we come to the research areas now. There are two researches that have been sponsored by the IDC on small-scale mining in Ghana. The first is to be presented by Professor Hinton. We will talk about informalization of Ghana's small-scale gold mining economy, drivers and policy implications. Anyway, if you hear the word galamsey, know that it is also another word for small-scale mining in Ghana. This is referred to as galamsey. So I don't know whether you came across that.
I was going to explain it, but okay. Great to be here. Today I'm going to be talking about everyone's favorite subject, and that's small-scale mining in Ghana, or galamsey. This is just a bit about myself. This is a topic that I've been studying in Ghana for about 15 years now, spending on average about 3 to 4 months a year examining various aspects of the sector, which has led to the publication of over 100 papers and reports, most of which only my dad has read. But anyway, over this time I've been really fortunate to have visited and studied small-scale mining in a number of other countries as well, countries like Mali, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Malawi, Guyana, and Suriname. Just so we're on the same page, these are typically the images that come to mind when we hear the phrase artisanal mining and artisanal and small-scale mining, or small-scale mining and artisanal mining, galamsey in the case of Ghana. Images of child labor, environmental impacts, health and safety issues. But I'm beginning to believe, having looked at this for so long, that the media and to a large extent policymakers have become a bit too fixated on the sector's impacts and what it looks like, as opposed to trying to figure out or trying to understand why it looks the way it does. The fixation is particularly evident in the media. We're regularly treated to a suite of headlines which portray Galamsey, or illegal mining in Ghana, in an extremely negative light, focusing on impacts, and that's largely how we've approached things in Ghana to date with regards to regularizing the sector and supporting the sector. I've been fortunate over the years to have interviewed numerous actors in Ghana about artisanal and small-scale mining, and based on the information I've gathered, I now think very differently about Galamsey. Going back to this point about policymakers and the media and donors being possibly a bit short-sighted and not asking why Galamsey is the way it is, my view is that this is a sector we've created, that policies and actions have informalized artisanal and small-scale mining, or ASM, in Ghana, and to a large extent elsewhere. And I think this serves as a nice lead-in to Gordon's presentation on the Chinese in the small-scale mining sector, because it helps to explain why the Chinese are in the sector today. So just a bit about the project, briefly. It was carried out with partners from Royal Holloway, University of London, the University of Mines and Technology, and the Central University College, Ghana. A bit about me. It may sound pathetic, but I've kind of dedicated my career to putting ASM, or small-scale mining, on the map, on the donor agenda. For some reason, it's not, and I'll get into why it should be briefly in a second. Pretty passionate about ASM. I breathe and live it. One of my best friends is a diamond miner in Akwatia, a diamond mining area in Ghana, and he actually helped us on this project. Organization of the talk. Bit of background first. A bit more on the project, some key findings. I'm going to focus on some particular findings, and then where we intend to go from here. Just some more background, briefly. A big problem is that we've consistently viewed and treated ASM as a rush-type activity, okay, populated by rogue entrepreneurs in policy, when it's much more than that. In many cases, it's poverty-driven, as the previous speaker indicated, and can tell us a lot about the state of a country's economy. Why? Because it may be the only place in Africa where you will see an illiterate farmer working shoulder to shoulder with an engineer, or a former public sector worker, or an accountant, or someone with a master's degree. Over the years, I've interviewed some very interesting people working barefoot, without shirts, filthy, in some of these mining camps, including a guy who taught physics for 25 years in Liberia, someone who has a master's degree from the University of Amsterdam, a trained accountant. So they're not all illiterates, they're not all armed robbers, they're not all rapists, as the media often portrays. It's an eclectic group of people. Just like everyone in this room is different, so is everyone in a small-scale mining camp. Not everyone is mining. It's a microeconomy, and this is what makes ASM so remarkable. With pretty much nothing, it manages to create all these jobs. They say for every person employed directly in ASM, 6 additional jobs are created. Okay, so you need a taxi driver to bring him or her to site. You need someone to feed them. You need someone to clothe them, that kind of thing. So the next time you finance a military sweep, these are the things that you need to think about, because all of these jobs are threatened. Going back to this here, in Ghana, there's an estimated 1 million people engaged in small-scale mining, mostly gold mining. And like most African countries, it's the most important rural non-farm activity, which is why its absence from donor policy is a bit striking, bizarre. We see throughout Africa and Ghana these two activities dovetailing, with labor and capital moving from one to the other over time, okay? And you know something, Galamsey is no different than any other informal, unlicensed industry. It's just a bit messier. It deals with much more valuable commodities. There's more sketchy people. And there are certainly more firearms. But it's pretty much the same thing, you know? It's just like any other informal economy. Just briefly on the project, these were our research questions. And the main motivation behind this work, I guess I can sum it up with 3 brief summaries or stories. Now, the first is that the government assembled a national task force to combat illegal mining a couple years ago. Force does not work. It continues to amaze me how government officials, not only in Ghana but elsewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, think that rounding up a bunch of police officers and army officers to destroy equipment is a solution to illegal mining. It's not. There are abuses, there is vandalizing, people end up getting hurt, and in the end, people become more entrenched in mining. Why is that? Well, we see a lot of these low-quality machines kicking around Ghana, these Changfa machines, we call them, okay? These guys are desperate to increase their yields, so they borrow money from a buyer or a money man, a middleman, sorry. They buy a machine, they borrow money from their families, and then the task force comes in and they destroy the equipment, destroy the machine, destroy everything else. How is this person going to get their money back? Obviously by mining, not farming cassava, right? But, and this is where kind of what's shaped my perspective here, my new perspective. Despite all the problems with Galamsey, there's a lot of good things happening, okay? Like this. This is one example. This is a guy who I interviewed in the Japa area, one of our study sites, an illiterate guy. His family is nowhere near the site, but he's making some money and he's sending his kids to school, okay? So there's kind of, some thinking about future generations. So the question is, how can we think more creatively about things? How can we get people on the same page? Because I think, successive governments and I and other researchers who do research in these communities want the same thing with regards to ASM. We want it formalized, but we just have very different ideas on how to go about achieving it. Briefly on the methods and fieldwork, we conducted this project, the fieldwork between February and August 2014, a couple phases, did some interviews in Accra with policymakers, NGO people, banks, and then we carried out our fieldwork in two sort of adjacent localities in the central and the western region, respectively. And for those of you who don't know, they're pretty much side by side. One is in the central region, Dunkwa, the other one is in the western region, Wasakropong. And kind of very interesting dynamics there. We selected them because, there's a lot of Chinese miners in these areas now, and in my view, that's the latest expression or the latest nuance of the sector's informality, okay? So hopefully what I say today will help explain in large part why that's happening, why there's so many Chinese miners engaged in illegal activity in Ghana. We've also done a lot of work, different types of mining-related research in these areas, so we already had that sort of entry that you need to get in these communities. And based on our intimate knowledge of these mining communities and just ASM in general, we were able to quickly put together a stakeholder map and identify the relevant people that we needed to interview. Just quickly fast forwarding to the findings here, I'm going to summarize some of our key findings as they relate to informality, okay? I think the worrying thing for me is that in the past 15 years, nothing seems to have changed with regards to policy stance. More and more people are moving into small-scale gold mining in Ghana, and it's not because there are more criminals or rapists or armed robbers. It's because of broader economic issues. There's 68,000 university or graduates every year in Ghana. They reckon that there's 600,000 unemployed graduates in Ghana at the moment. The cedi is out of control. The price of gold has skyrocketed. I mean, if we look at this chart here, when I started doing my PhD in 2000, the price of gold was around $300 an ounce. Now it's in the range of $1,300 an ounce. So, the important thing to take away from that is that it's made ASM in an economy where there's not much to do in terms of jobs, or where it's a struggle really to find a viable job. It's made ASM a pretty popular destination, an appealing destination. But the worrying thing with regards to regularizing this sector or formalizing this sector is that the stories over this period haven't really changed in terms of my experience. Let me just summarize some of the key findings as they relate to creating informality, okay? First set of findings is that, there are a lot of inappropriate policies in place, okay? This is taken from an article I wrote in 2005, and it was based on some field work I did in 2002. And as you can see, there's reference made to kind of the cumbersome process of getting a license and the costs and the delays and so on. things haven't changed. And let me kind of put this into perspective, sharing with you a story of a miner we interviewed, Festus in Dunkwa, as it relates to inappropriate policies. He was explaining what he had to go through to get a license, and it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, all of these costs he had to pay to get a license. He had to do all of these things to put himself in a position to get a license. He had to pay 800 Ghana cedis for surveying and to put himself in a position to get licensed. He had to pay another 1,000 Ghana cedis to the commission. I don't know if these numbers are accurate, but the point is, he's had to pay all these monies to various ministries and various bodies to get this license process for an EPA permit, all kinds of things. Okay, and this is. I'm going to get back to this momentarily. This is where the process officially starts, but the point is that he had to do several other things before he was even in a position to apply for a license. I'll get into that momentarily, okay? A second group of findings, or bit of findings, is that category of findings, is that there's been inadequate institutional support over the years. And I don't know what this is attributed to. Maybe it's because we don't understand this sector or care not to understand this sector properly. There's been conflicting institutions. We legalized small-scale gold mining in 1989, and from the beginning there's been conflicting institutions, conflicting policies, conflicting ministries, etc. We had an institutional framework laid out in 1991, the Small-Scale Mining Project, and what it was intended, it was to bring together all these agencies, these government agencies, to carry out different tasks as they relate to small-scale mining. So you have the Geological Survey, the Minerals Commission, the Precious Minerals and Marketing Corporation, and the Mines Department, which is now the Inspectorate Division of the Minerals Commission. And each was supposed to get funding from the World Bank project in 1995 to carry out these tasks. But what emerged from this dynamic was the Minerals Commission basically taking on everything, and PMMC kind of continuing as that buying agent, and the other agencies not really carrying out their tasks for various reasons. Couple of other things. How do you formalize, and I'm reflecting on the past here, how do you formalize small-scale mining when you have a mines department awarding licenses to small-scale diamond miners and a minerals commission awarding licenses to small-scale gold miners? So I've interviewed people who went through the process to get a license, and in the end, it turned out to be someone who had a diamond mining concession. Now that's since been corrected because the Mines Department is now an Inspectorate Division of the Minerals Commission, but this was going on for ages. The Environmental Protection Agency, it administers an environmental impact assessment, which is very, very brief, a checklist. This causes numerous delays. There have been discussions about putting a satellite desk, an EPA satellite desk in the Minerals Commission to expedite things, but there have been delays of 4 to 5 months as a result of having to get this environmental impact assessment completed. Perhaps the biggest contradiction is the Minerals Commission versus the Task Force versus the PMMC. You have the Precious Minerals and Marketing Corporation buying gold from both illegal and legal miners, and the Minerals Commission looking to legalize small-scale mining. So we interviewed a guy in Japa, a buyer. He said, as for this town, 90% of the work is illegal. I have a certificate. Any gold that enters this office, I can buy it. It is only outside of this office. It is illegal. So what message does that send out to small-scale miners? Couple of other things. A collapse of the small-scale mining division in the Minerals Commission. Why did this happen? They collapsed it. There was a division in the Minerals Commission for small-scale mining. The most employees in the Minerals Commission are doing work on small-scale mining. Now you have different people working on small-scale mining reporting to different bosses. And this has proved very, very difficult for small-scale miners to actually get an answer on licenses and other things. The Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, there's been several changes of ministers in the ministry. I don't know what the reasons are, but obviously with these changes and different advisors coming on board, different ideologies, it takes a while for policies to be ironed out. So there are all these changes that have to be taken into account. Okay. A few years ago, the ILO produced a very landmark report on ASM, which stated this, basically talking about how the whole process in general is very, very bureaucratic. A few years ago, I was quite excited because in your first poverty reduction strategy paper, it seemed that there was going to be a space created for small-scale mining. You know, it talked about your laws being disproportionately favoring large-scale mining enterprises and not taking into account small-scale miners. But then all of a sudden you produce another poverty reduction strategy paper, and you didn't mention small-scale mining once. So my excitement rapidly waned. Final bit of findings is there's no land. If I want to get a license as a small-scale miner, there's no land. And the data speaks for itself. This is a map. Your entire country is under concession to large-scale mining companies and mineral exploration companies. So it makes it very difficult to get a license. So I go into the process knowing I have to absorb all these costs, and then possibly at the end of the process, I may not get a license because there's no land. If you go back to Festus's case, when he referred to this is where the process officially starts, he was describing how it's very tedious to get a license. And there's been a proliferation of all of these the lack of available land has mobilized some of these informal players, like the chiefs and the landowners. They know that there's no land available, and they're charging all these ridiculous prices in the informal economy that's outside of Accra in order for these guys to access land. So in the case of Festus, he had to pay the chief 20,000 Ghana cedis, showed us the receipt, and he had to pay the cocoa farmers 4,000 Ghana cedis per acre. So, you know, there's simply no land left. Let me wrap up by talking about where to go from here. There are obvious answers. We need more land. We need to simplify the licensing process. We need to deal with the traditional leaders. We need to deal with those chiefs. We do. But what about this? And this is where our research is right now, and I'll leave you with this point here, is we need to create some agency for these small-scale miners, okay? We need to get them out of the bush. We need to start thinking about investment and putting them in a position to get a license. Yes, the formalization structures aren't the greatest in the world, but whilst we're challenging these structures, we can work with miners unlicensed and licensed to manage their finances. And this was a big thing that came out in the research and comes out in any research, you know, that these miners are struggling to manage their money. These guys want to know how to manage their money better because often there's no bank on site, there's no means to collateralize and to mobilize loans. And this is something moving forward myself and a colleague at the University of Bath believe is a crucial aspect of this formalization dynamic. We've approached a few groups for funding. In short, they haven't really liked the idea, but possibly because ASM scares them, I don't know. So we'll see where we go from here. Because I'm thinking that many people are put off by ASM because of its weirdness, okay? Because in these places, you certainly see things that you don't see anywhere else, okay? But once you get over this, you realize that these people are no different than you and I. Merci.
From the University of Leeds. His will be on the impact of Chinese involvement in small-scale gold mining in Ghana.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here. Difficult to follow Gavin, of course. And I'm afraid I don't have so many pictures on my slides. It's a bit more like chalk and talk. But let me start, as I know the 20 minutes is going to rush away rapidly. Okay, this research project is looking at a recent controversial issue in small-scale gold mining in Ghana, which is the involvement of foreign miners, foreign miners in general and Chinese miners in particular. And the research focuses on Chinese miners due to the scale of the numbers involved, perhaps as many as 50,000 Chinese miners at its height. and also due to the very significant impact that the Chinese have had, I would say arguably changing the nature of small-scale mining in an irreversible way. A quick bit of background. As the Honourable Deputy Minister pointed out, small-scale gold mining in Ghana is an indigenous activity which by law is reserved for Ghanaians. Yet despite that, from 2006 onwards, there's been an influx of Chinese migrants, Chinese miners in particular, as well as other foreigners. And this sort of influx of foreign miners sort of gained momentum, especially with the high price of gold from 2008 onwards. And by 2012, sort of tens of thousands of foreign miners, particularly Chinese miners, were reported in the alluvial gold mining areas in the south of the country. And the situation was described as it had become out of hand. The sort of press and media sort of response to this became sort of increasingly sort of negative and hostile, especially to sort of, in quotes, illegal Chinese miners during 2012 and early 2013. And there was sort of particular concerns about the adverse environmental impact. And so perhaps rather belatedly in May 2013, President Mahama established this sort of interministerial task force, which has been referred to earlier, to combat illegal small-scale mining. And all illegal small-scale mining activities were included in the remit of the task force, both Ghanaians and foreigners, but, and I think President Mahama was quite careful in this way, but primarily the task force was aimed at foreign miners and especially Chinese citizens. And it was, as Gavin has mentioned, it was essentially a police and military operation. The language used was about flushing out illegal miners, and the task force operations took place from June to August 2013 with significant numbers of arrests and deportation of Chinese and other foreign miners, as well as the voluntary departure of many more. So this is the sort of the one element of our research into these sort of Chinese miners in the sort of alluvial gold mining areas in southern Ghana. But in contrast to what was unquestionably illegal mining, a second form of Chinese involvement is also apparent in the country. And this stems from the fact that foreign companies could act as service providers to small-scale miners by law. And one particular case of this was the Shanxi Mining Company, which collaborated with two small-scale concession holders in the mining village of Bani in the Talensi district in the Upper East region of Ghana from 2008 onwards. And this is hard rock mining, so it's different from alluvial mining. It's hard rock mining that involves sort of underground shafts. But this service provision, there was a 2012 amendment to the Minerals and Mining Act, which prohibited this service provision by foreign companies, but it was not applied retrospectively. So Shanxi was not affected by the 2012 amendment. But what it has meant is it's now only one of two current foreign service providers in the country. But this so-called service provision, this role has involved Shanxi in constructing a very sort of high-tech, state-of-the-art underground mine and a processing plant on the 50 acres of land of the two small-scale concession owners, I mean, it's the type of mine and sort of mining operations that are sort of far beyond the capacity and really the wildest dreams of a small-scale concession holder. It's not small-scale mining, it's large-scale mining on a small-scale concession. It's not service provision, in my view, it's simply mining. It's simply mining on the concessions where the permits have been provided to local Ghanaians. So perhaps not surprisingly, Shanxi's presence has been controversial, and it's led to local conflict and disputes. So the research has examined these two rather different examples of Chinese involvement in small-scale mining. Just quickly a little on the research question and methodology. The main research question, quite simply, was to look at the impact of Chinese involvement on small-scale gold mining in Ghana, to look at the economic, social, environmental and political impacts, and also to look at these in terms of a grid of different possible impacts, positive and negative, direct and indirect. I'm going to focus mainly on the sort of the economic and social impacts in this sort of brief presentation. So as indicated, two geographical locations, Shanxi Mining Company as a service provider to local concession owners, and then the other location, the sort of irregular Chinese migrants involved in illegal mining in the Upper Denchira East municipality, whose capital is Dunkwa on Offen in the central region, and I only just discovered 5-10 minutes ago that Gavin had also done research in Dunkwa. Our fieldwork was undertaken very recently in July and August 2014. I've collaborated with Ghanaian colleagues in the Upper East from Bolgatanga Polytechnic and in the central region from the University of Education, Winneba. So fieldwork undertaken in July and August 2014, semi-structured interviews, focus group discussions, a household questionnaire in the Upper East, and site visits to two small-scale mining concessions. So given that the fieldwork was completed only 1 month ago, this event has come rather prematurely. Academics often talk about their findings being preliminary, while in this case preliminary is most definitely the case. So let me outline some of these preliminary findings. So these first three findings, which I've sort of entitled From Small Scale to Large Scale, are fairly evident and uncontested, at least the first two. So the involvement of Chinese miners in the small-scale mining sector in Ghana has introduced new technology and machinery into the sector. The Honourable Deputy Minister in her presentation talked about the low level of technology associated with the small-scale mining sector. Well, I think that is rapidly changing. And the new technology and machinery that it's mainly the sort of the Chinese who've introduced. This has transformed the traditional methods using a sort of pickaxe, shovel, and pans. In particular, the Chinese have introduced the now widespread use of excavators, as well as wash plants and crushing machines, and sort of water platforms and suction equipment for dredging in rivers. Along with the technology came capital. And this combination of new technology and capital has led to a sort of hugely intensified production on small-scale concessions. So areas of land are now mined in weeks that previously would have taken years using the traditional methods. And of course, another consequence of this sort of mechanization and intensification of production has been much larger scale environmental degradation, particularly in the areas of alluvial mining. This is inclusive of both land and water bodies. And rivers in particular have become heavily polluted. The river Offen at Dunkwa was described as like coffee with milk, and that's exactly, that's a very apt description. And then thirdly, sort of small-scale mining has been transformed. What was previously an indigenous livelihood activity, often sort of complemented with farming activities, has been transformed into big business, at least for some. At least, and in particular for those concession holders who've worked with Chinese miners or who have adopted Chinese methods. One concession holder told us he was working with the Chinese. Basically, he turned over his concession to a group of Chinese miners. They had paid him this a sum of money, which is called goodwill, and then there'd been a deal between them. He took 15% of the value of the gold extracted. The Chinese doing the mining took 85%. We asked him how much his 15% amounted to. He said 25,000 Ghana cedis per week. Per week. This is 5,000 pounds per week. So as Dr. Soa said, we are certainly in the wrong profession. So small-scale mining has become big business, at least for some people at the sort of the apex of the small-scale mining sector. A lot of media attention has been on illegal Chinese miners, yet what has not been emphasized in much of the media coverage is that Chinese miners could not operate without Ghanaian counterparts and collaborators. And one common phrase that we heard frequently in local level interviews referred to sort of incoming Chinese migrants being led by Ghanaians, In particular, Chinese miners were led to the chiefs, of course. They were also led to the district level authorities. And this makes sense. Chinese migrants could not have functioned without close cooperation with local Ghanaians. We're informed by Chinese interviewees that the Chinese migrants who largely came from the one county in China were relatively poor people, not highly educated, rarely able to speak any English. They were clearly totally unfamiliar with Ghanaian culture and traditions, especially regarding land ownership. And clearly they required the guidance and the assistance in entering local communities. Another recurring theme was of chiefs dispersing land to Chinese miners for significant sums of money, as well as allegations of official corruption, both at district and regional levels of government. And of course, the Chinese undertook mining in close collaboration with Ghanaian miners, both the legal concession holders and also the unlicensed galamsey operators. So the mining was undertaken in close collaboration. Another area of impact is that we've looked at is the economic impact. And when we have the opportunity to analyze, this is the grid that we're adopting for looking at impact. So there's sort of direct positive and negative, and then indirect positive and negative impacts. When we have the opportunity to analyze our data in a more systematic way, we will adopt this grid. This is just a limited version of the analysis, sort of early analysis for the alluvial gold mining area. So in terms of economic impact, the positives are significant in terms of increased efficiency and effectiveness of gold production and the general stimulus that it's given to local business. In Dunkwa, at the height of Chinese involvement, we were told repeatedly that business was booming, and local traders were not happy when the task force arrived and flushed out the Chinese. Of course, there's also a negative side, loss of farmland, especially cocoa farms. This is significant, and land which has become severely degraded. There are also major questions to be asked, and perhaps research to be done on what happened to the gold. And this has obvious implications for the government of Ghana and revenue collection. There's widespread allegations that much of the gold was not channeled through official sources, but has sort of been smuggled out of the country. Also, an economic boom for traders can also adversely affect the cost of living for other people, especially relatively poor people, when prices soar. And another sort of negative aspect is the increase not only in the presence of sex workers, but also, we were told, the sexual exploitation of local young girls. In terms of social impact, the grid is not so relevant here, as the impacts are almost wholly negative. And the intensification of mining and the money that can be earned from it has meant that has brought about sort of negative impacts, both in terms of education and health. The intensification of mining, areas being mined very rapidly, has meant that there's increasingly abandoned pits with significant waste heaps. Local women and children then rewash the gravel from the waste heaps in order to attract sort of remaining bits of gold. This locally is known as poli, and many school pupils prefer to go and do poli rather than go to school. And this we were told includes from primary schools. Therefore, in mining communities, we found that there was low attendance at schools, including primary schools, poor performance of those schools, behavioral problems in the schools, high rates of teenage pregnancy. In health, again, increase in health problems associated with small-scale mining, skin diseases, respiratory tract infections to do with dust and fumes from machinery, gunshot and cutlass wounds from the conflicts between Chinese and local miners, increase in sexually transmitted diseases, children drowning in abandoned, unreclaimed mine pits which are full of water. We visited one mining village close to Dunkwa, where a primary school girl had died. She had drowned in a pit which was just at the back of the school. That was a couple of years previously. That pit was still there, it was still open, it was still full of water, just meters away from the back of the school building. The Chinese presence also led to sort of increase in local conflict and other security issues. So in the alluvial mining areas in the south, there were direct conflicts between local and Chinese miners, robberies of groups of Chinese miners, especially when they were mining in the bush. But also more generally, it was reported that there had been an increase in armed robberies. This is stated by the police to be with guns that were originally brought in by the Chinese for their own protection, but then often had got into other criminal hands. Particularly with the task force, they sort of rapidly left their camps, and the guns had been acquired by others, leading to a sort of increase in armed robberies in the area. In the Upper East, Shanxi's presence has led to a description of a sort of once harmonious community now being riven by divisions. And these divisions are between community members, between those who are benefiting, those who are not, between some members of the community and the traditional authorities, and also conflict with Shanxi itself in relation to compensation, for example. So, there was one particular incident when, in May 2012, there was a demonstration by some local people against Shanxi. It led to the arrest of 12 locals, including the local district assembly member, on charges of assault of Chinese personnel and alleged destruction of Shanxi's property, totaling a huge US $3.4 million. This court case is still pending, so these local individuals still have these very serious charges hanging over them. So serious issues of conflict. Another finding is of sort of legal impunity. We're told about this the culture of impunity that seemed to exist, particularly sort of 2012, early 2013, when, as described, things got out of hand. And various aspects of sort of illegality undertaken by both sort of Chinese and Ghanaians often seem to have gone unpunished with little or no application of the law. So mining in rivers, for example, which is illegal. The purchasing of land and of small-scale concessions from Ghanaians, sort of also illegal. What happens to the gold, the allegations that gold not sold through proper channels and smuggled out. And quite surprisingly, this sort of, quite militarized task force set up, many arrests undertaken by the National Task Force, but surprisingly, no prosecutions. And then this another issue, the sort of lost revenue, which we touched on before. Sort of large amounts of money on the one hand are being made by sort of Ghanaians and Chinese alike, but little revenue is being collected by the government of Ghana. Of course, activity that is largely unlawful in nature, there is going to be limited opportunities for revenue collection, but this is revenue that's being lost. Clearly, illegal Chinese miners are paying no taxes to the government. Unlawful galamsey operators are paying no taxes, yet their operations have increased in scale with Chinese involvement or with the adoption of Chinese technology and practices. The legal concession holders, they pay sort of little or no taxes or royalties either, despite the potential now for sort of concession owners to achieve very, very high incomes. Yet the other side of the coin is that government, both at local and national levels, but particularly at local levels, are faced with significant expenditure to deal with some of the consequences of the intensification of illegal mining, including environmental and security issues. So we have this situation of sort of legal impunity, sort of loss of revenue. I think we have to ask questions about why such situations have been allowed to develop. Why did it take so long for government to act? And on the one hand, it would appear that various authorities have failed in their responsibilities, from immigration officials to the Minerals Commission, to regional local government, and to the police. So what explains this institutional failure? And Ghana is not a weak state. So I would suggest that endemic corruption is one part of any answer. And in the fieldwork locations, in both fieldwork locations, we were constantly hearing allegations of various individuals taking bribes and being bought off. And this extended from local people, including the chiefs, to relatively high-ranking government officials. Policy recommendations will emanate from this research. We're not yet at that stage, given that data collection was only completed a month ago, but some very preliminary thoughts about policy implications. Small-scale mining has changed very fast in the past 5 years, yet the Ghanaian state would appear to be behind the game in many respects and have failed to come to terms with what I see as sort of major and irreversible changes. So, first, I think the whole question of the illegality of foreign involvement needs to be reconsidered. Positive economic benefits have occurred, at least for some, with Chinese involvement and the introduction of new technology and the capital that they bring. Therefore, a review of the Minerals and Mining Act would seem appropriate, inclusive of sort of re-legalizing foreign involvement in ASM as service providers. However, we also need to take into consideration the experience of Shanxi Mining Company in the Upper East, which suggests that the whole nature of what is service provision to small-scale miners needs to be carefully considered, as well as the definition itself of what is small-scale. Secondly, this issue of revenue collection by the state needs to be urgently considered. Opportunities for increased revenue are being missed by government, not only on what it legally should be collecting, but also on what it could be collecting. And here, issues of sort of royalties and income tax from small-scale miners could be considered. This was an area which was described by the Small-Scale Miners Association as ambiguous in law at present. Well, such ambiguities perhaps should be clarified to facilitate government revenue collection. Gavin's talked earlier about the sort of the whole issue of Chinese involvement in small-scale mining being underpinned by what he calls the sector's informality, and pointed to sort of one aspect of this being is the length of time and the cost of obtaining a legal concession. And here, I think, is an area which should be reviewed with a view to speeding up the process and to providing more assistance and support to the sector more generally. Another area of policy consideration is the role of the district assemblies and the district security councils, the DISECs. Their role in enforcing the law. The National Task Force was a one-off attempt to flush out illegal miners. It was an attempt which largely left out the district assemblies out of the loop, and maybe that was a mistake. I think that if there is going to be district-level law enforcement and maintenance of security, then this must involve the district assemblies and the DISEC. And then finally, in terms of environmental issues, the role of the EPA needs to be considered, both in a preventative capacity and in addressing the significant problems of environmental degradation. I think so decentralization. At present, the regional offices are not well placed. Need to consider decentralization of offices and enhanced capacity. Just finally, I think the policy recommendations are only part of the changes necessary. This whole case of foreign involvement in small-scale mining has raised wider issues and bigger problems within Ghanaian politics and society. And I think these issues are illustrated by two quotes from interviewees, both who were government officials. One concerned the problem of legal impunity and the need to make the law bite. And the law needs to be enforced. It's otherwise, what's the point of laws and regulations if they're routinely ignored? A second related comment is that the issue of foreign involvement in small-scale mining has highlighted that, in the words of this official, state institutions are not functioning as they should be. That may be fairly evident, and clearly there is a need for more viable and effective state institutions. Of course, this is easier said than done, but perhaps that there needs to be, I would humbly suggest, some sort of deeper introspection, especially by Ghanaians, about the whole nature of Ghanaian politics and the role of state institutions in order to ensure that such institutions become more viable and effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've got two very exciting presentations. We have two discussants. One is from the Environmental Protection Agency, and the other is from the Forestry Division of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Only you from the no, you can come over here. Maybe one at a time. Yeah. So Ebenezer will do the first one, and then Musa will do the second.
Thank you very much for for the opportunity. I'd like to commend you for the research work that is going on. When you have an opportunity for somebody to look at you and give you some reflections, it makes you see things in a better way. I would say that I react to some of the things that you are throwing out, but I'm doing that in a very good, with the mind that it will always make us better. This is a good feedback to us. We take them and work with them. You know, I must say that, you know, Ghana has had illegal mining, some degree of illegal mining over the years. I mean, as a young officer 20 years ago, you visit or go on mine monitoring, and they tend to be operating on the fringes of some of the concessions that existed. To the extent that it got to a point, some of the large-scale mines were looking at possibilities of integrating them into their system. So they mine out an area. Once they finish with that, they train them, give them some basic equipment, and then they go back to take what I would call the leftovers. And then they buy whatever they're able to recover. So there was some degree of illegal mining, which was, I would say, was tolerable at the time. And I like Professor Crawford's research work, looking at how the Chinese intervention, not only Chinese, we have people from Armenia, from even within the West Africa sub-region, being part of these processes, and how they have impacted or accelerated the development of the sector. It means that we cannot operate the same way we used to. We need to rethink our strategies. We need to look at the ways in which we can actually regulate. The question, as you were presenting, I had in mind was, how do we regulate an illegality? You know, our systems are so formalized that you need to have some legality behind the activities for you to be able to actually hold them together and regulate them. We are looking at for small-scale mining, you are looking at the cumulative impacts. If you ever had the opportunity to go on a helicopter ride in some of these areas where they operate, your first reaction will be shock. I mean, you see the level at which the land has been degraded, the water bodies that, as you mentioned, are turned into coffee with milk and all that. And it shocks you. You know, so it's really a big challenge. How do we organize them, you know, so that they are able to be trained, be able to operate within a certain framework that will ensure that you take the gold, yet you have the capacity to restore the land. That's a big challenge. Even the large-scale ones are struggling with it. There are calls for us to introduce what we call a reclamation bond to the small-scale mining sector. Even with the large ones, we are struggling in the sense that how do you estimate the cost of degradation and how much should be set aside to restore the land after or in the course of mining? So I think that the research can also begin to look at the cost of degradation and how much it will cost us to reclaim. After the task force, we were called upon to look at that as an issue. How do we restore the land and how much it will cost us as a nation? And the preliminary estimates that some of the institutions are throwing up is making everybody run away from it. You know, and meanwhile, the states did not benefit directly from what was done. So for me, the challenge is, can we have small-scale mining that can ensure that the environment is at the back of the processes that are going on? We are looking at, in terms of regularization, as Professor Gavin said, we would do with some speed in processing the applications of the small-scale miners. But I can assure you that we are doing like between 1,000 to 1,500 permits a year. And there's a thin line between the legal and illegal ones. they take the permits from, as my honorable minister said, they take it for, say, Dunkwa, and then they mine at Takwa. It's tough. But it calls for decentralization, have a certain presence in closer to where the action is. We have to look at technology. We cannot use manpower to be able to do this. At the point, we need to begin to deploy some form of technology that will help us to monitor the activities of these, of the small-scale miners. And they also have to have a role to play. If we organize them well, maybe they can do some self-regulation. And that could help reduce the issues that are related to it. There's also the failure of our land use planning system. I think it cuts across sectors. It's not only for mining. But there are calls for a land use planning system that will ensure that areas that are reserved are respected. So you don't mine anywhere. I mean, it should be able to delineate where mining can take place and where it cannot take place. There are legal provisions for such areas, but do we actually demarcate them or delineate them on the ground so that people know that these are areas that we shouldn't go? I think you should also look at why the traditional system broke down. Because, yeah, I'll run up soon. Because in our Ghanaian society, the chiefs and the traditional system actually regulates land use. So if you have a situation where, even at that level, there's a breakdown, then there's a big problem there. Because I can't go into a village and start building a house. I have to be given the land to build it. Yeah. Okay. So I will say that there are institutional issues, there are capacity issues, there are issues related to organization, and we can only work together so that we can address some of the issues that have been thrown up here. Thank you very much.
Of course, at the ministry, I'm in charge of forestry, so I'm just kind of filling in. But based on the two papers, first let me point on Gavin's talked about fixation to the impact and not what it looks like. And that's a bit historical. In 2010, the World Bank sponsored a study who said 10% of Ghana's GDP was lost due to environmental degradation. So the fixation is trying to reverse that degradation. And so all our efforts is looking at the impact of these small-scale miners. Maybe your study would help us to begin to focus on how we can turn a bad situation into a benefit. And I think that's one of it is. Secondly, on impact, one of the issues is to help us focus. In fact, that sector is largely driven by donor inflows. We all agree that the money has not, even the large-scale mining, there's not been any benefit. The small-scale mining, not much benefit. So government has to spend its own money. The donor community must begin to put their support into Ghana, into reversing this is making it work. Some people have said that let's leave the gold underground, whether it's small scale or, if I ask a lot of people in Ghana, they'll say mining has no benefit to Ghana at all. So let's leave it underground. And probably some of this research and understanding that we create to people. Another point was about this land. There's not enough land. Indeed. I'm sure you understand the land tenure system in Ghana. No government gives out land. What the law only says is that if you come, you prove that you have land, you've gone through it appropriately, then they give you the license. So a lot of large-scale people or people with licenses have covered the area. But I think recently that was reversed. You are supposed to keep your license for only a period of, I think, 2 years or a few years. Some have kept them for about 15, 16 years. And so even people who are genuine investors, when they come in, the place is covered. So people they will take up the land and hope to sell it to another person. But I think recently that policy was reversed. If your license is there for more than 2 years, you automatically lose it. And so if you go back to search, actually when government started to regulate a lot of small-scale miners, they realized that there was no land. I think something that they've recognized and reversed that particular law. So now if you're a small-scale miner, you can actually get land because somebody who was holding it has, it's expired, and so you can have access. There's also probably, there's a new mining policy that's just, at the moment it's in cabinet, but it's always possible. If you say this workshop is premature, but it's even late for this mining policy if you do not bring your findings as quickly as possible. It's something that we can use to influence this new mining policy. So next time you're in Ghana, please talk to Mr. Tibia and whatever, the deputy minister is here, whether we can still take a look at the draft mining policy and see where it would be useful and where it will help us. There is, my final point to be that there's probably some learning process from the forestry. A lot of our forest policy started in the early part of this century. And at that time, natural resource management was basically forestry. The colonial government, if you look at the way even our forest reserves have been structured, it was first for environmental protection, to create the humidity for cocoa, and then family. But incidentally, we realized that a lot of forest reserves do have our heaviest deposits of minerals. So maybe behind their mind, they realized these were heavy deposits. This is where the heavy deposits of mine. So with the law not to allow mining in forest reserves, takes away already the economic impacts of mining in our economy, because we cannot allow so one research area, and that's something that we attempted to, when we're coming, I've been discussing with the different people saying that she was going to talk about reclamation. The story that mining has given to us is that it's a bad activity. It's a bad activity. We see the forest disrupt, but that's what our policy in nature is mainly on forest and gold mining at the minimal level by artisans was okay. I don't think we had a problem with artisanal miners. It's when the Chinese came with the equipment, we started seeing heavy destruction from this equipment. That is kind of a problem. And we've never seen mining as mining for people. Just as in timber, we did not see timber for people till our 1994 Forest and Wildlife Policy. That's when we realized that we could only manage timber for people. And so the 1994 Forest and Wildlife Policy made a conscious effort to make sure that timber would be for people. Maybe mining should learn from that. We don't see it. We see it as foreigners coming and taking large-scale plantations, mining concessions, mining the gold. The government gets 10%, 15%, and then it's gone. So we don't see our people in it, and that's one of the things that we need to change. Thank you very much.
I have a question and contribution packaged together, and I think I will address it to the Honorable Minister. It seems the small-scale mining business is very lucrative, and from the figures, it looks like a lot of revenue, is coming into the hands of those involved. But we all know that the tax net has a lot of loopholes in Ghana, so that means that there might be tax evasion being very prevalent. So I'm thinking it's not possible to harness the activities of these small-scale miners and streamline those activities by setting up a regulatory framework that would encourage them to come into cooperatives, either at regional cooperative level or sub-regional cooperative level, so that the activities can then be monitored, the tax net could be extended to cover all of them, and then they could also be given a kind of, if I can say, corporate responsibility, whereby they would embark on community and environmental-based enhancement projects so that they can give something back to those communities where they do the mining from. And I think that will help to, change the whole picture.
Any other question? Questions from? Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Gavin and Gordon, in your research, did you come across the most up-to-date map? Because, Gavin, you mentioned that there is no land. How is there a map that shows all the areas where there is gold, and has it all already been given out? And that's why there's no land. And the other thing I wanted to add is IGC Ghana, we have an ongoing research actually looking at the cost of galamsey and the estimated cost. It's just started, just been commissioned. So we'll have some results for you soon.
Any other questions? Okay, I have two minor ones. If you say more land, you know land is a limited resource. So more land, how are we going to get more land? Because as you get more land for mining, you get less land for agri and other things. So more land, I need a little bit of explanation on that. Then also, when we say that small-scale miners are driven to mining because of poverty, I'm really sure about that. How do we distinguish between poverty and greed? Because people can be driven to areas also by greed. If it is poverty, it probably will satisfy itself by getting a little bit more. But when you see the person going on acquiring more and more, in spite of the fact that he's now a little bit well off, and he borders maybe on greed rather than poverty. And we have to make a distinction about that. Again, aren't you worried about the possibility of a Dutch disease happening in this particular case, where because we think that we should focus just on small-scale mining, we just expand that area of activity, and then it becomes the only activity that villagers and everybody else want to engage in at the expense of other activities like agriculture and the rest, by which most of the people depend on. How do we manage some of these things? I think we'll give the opportunity. The Deputy Minister wants to make a comment? Well, the question was addressed to you. Okay. So as you answer that very quickly, then the presenters will also give their response, and then we'll go.
All right, thank you very much. All the issues that you raised are elaborately presented in the Minerals, Mining and Minerals Act. In fact, from our point of view, it's as a result of some of these responsibilities. That is why people don't want to engage in the legal mining. Because if you are doing the legal mining before you are given the license, we have to ensure that you belong to, we have cooperatives, we train them and all that. But because of the responsibilities attached to it, you have to claim the land after you have mined. And if you have a license, we'll be able to trace you. Wherever you go, we'll be able to trace you to ensure that you come back to reclaim the land. And then whatever social responsibility package that you signed with the community, you have fulfilled it. It is as a result of all these things, that is why the people will say it is very difficult to acquire the small-scale mining license. It is not actually getting the license that is difficult, but because we see that most of the people want to run away from their responsibilities, that is why they don't actually come. And those are some of the issues that we would also want you to look into. For example, the cost that you enumerated that you have to pay before you get a license doesn't come to the state or any institutions. They pay to individuals who have nothing to do with collecting the license or giving them. That is why he says that is only the starting point of getting the license, because all those costs are not paid to any government institutions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll give the floor to the group presenters to react to some of the comments we got now.
Let me just comment quickly on. Let me just comment quickly on cooperatives. They're already organized. I mean, these Galamsey camps have 25,000 people. You can't operate in an environment with 25,000 people unless they're organized. We don't need to reorganize them. We tried to reorganize people in the north in Talansi Nabdum under an equipment sharing scheme. They hate each other. They didn't want to come together, and therefore it didn't work. So we don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel. You know, we just go in there, and this is kind of like with all informal sectors. They organize themselves, and we just take stock of that organization. With regards to the cost, the whole point I was trying to make in my presentation, and maybe it didn't come out well because of just the 20 minutes, is that as a result of informalizing this sector, these additional costs come up. And the chiefs and all the informal sector players know this. And I had Richard Afino was there from the Minerals Commission, and he was saying, look, this is the law. You don't have to pay these costs. And we're like, we know. But as a result of it being very difficult to acquire land, and these people knowing, and chiefs thinking they own land when they're custodians of the land, you have to pay these monies. Even in areas of Dunkwa, as Gordon mentioned, where they're not even really producing cocoa. You know, you have to pay these guys money, and this is where the process starts. All those costs I was referring to were with regards to the surveying, with regards to paying for the EPA permits. So there are additional costs you have to pay. And in countries like Guyana, they don't make cost an issue. If you want to mine on a small scale, they don't make cost an issue. And as a barrier, don't create a barrier to formalization through costs. So it works there very, very fine. So it'd be interesting to take stock of that experience. On the land issue, 70% of the problems in the small-scale mining sector would be resolved if land was made available to register operations on. You can do it because you have a system of transferable mineral rights in place. There are people not using their concessions. You have to free up that area, okay? And what other countries are doing that are starting to reform their mining sectors, like Mozambique, Uganda, DRC, is they're creating these small-scale mining zones, blocking out areas. And you've done that in Ghana. You're doing that continuously in Ghana, but you're waiting for the exploration licenses to expire to do that. You have to be more proactive and block out those areas. You've done that in the north already, and there's several other areas where you've done it, I mean, ranging from Winneba to Tarkwa to Huni Valley, all these areas. So there is land available, definitely. On the issue of the Dutch disease, I'm not advocating for everyone to move into small-scale mining. What I'm reflecting on is a reality, which is the fact that under existing circumstances, farming is very difficult to carry out, okay, in many cases. So a lot of these people, you see them moving into mining to get some gold, to sell that gold, to buy fertilizers, which are no longer subsidized by the state fully. So what's interesting is when you see these guys, or these people mining, families, they consider themselves farmers. So they're not abandoning farming at all. And that was the point I was trying to make. I've done a lot of research on this. They balance the activities until they get enough money to the point where they can move into farming permanently. So a lot of them consider themselves farmers first. So, you know, you have these dynamics going on. Couple more points. Yeah, I completely understand the fact that this whole thing is donor-driven. But I mean, it's a case of kind of correcting policy so you don't create these problems for yourself in the long run. It hasn't been a fair playing field for the small-scale miners to date. And I understand what was mentioned before about the lessons from forestry and so on, but all of these events have happened, and we have to deal with these events in Ghana. You could simplify things by decentralizing the licensing process fully, which has been done in Tanzania. Now, all the lands in Tanzania are owned by the state. There's no traditional leaders involved. But, you know, it's certainly a lesson that we can kind of take stock of, you know, and move from there. On the issue of traditional leaders, finally, traditional leaders. Let's go back to these traditional leaders for a minute. Nkrumah systematically disempowered the chiefs. He seized lands in the name of the state. Jerry Rawlings further disempowered the chiefs by establishing the district assemblies. The chiefs have indirectly been re-empowered as a result of mining becoming a priority on your agenda. And in many cases, it's the lesser chiefs who are controlling the Galamsey sector. So you go to the Japa chief, for example, near Wasakopong. You go to the Japa chief of Wasakopong, and he has Chinese miners living in his house. So.
Just let me add a couple of points. In terms of Henry's questions about sort of up-to-date maps, we certainly saw up-to-date maps for the Upper East region. Of course, small-scale mining in the Upper East is more recent than in the sort of southern part of the country. And certainly there's a sort of there's a blocked-out area within the sort of what was the Talensi Nabdam district, which is I think something like 75 square kilometers. It's a large area of which, and then there's the sort of the small 25-acre concessions within that. But one, so that there's still the opportunity to apply for concessions within that blocked-out area. But one concern for me is that these are also farmlands. So, and the whole legal position is something we try to explore without really finding a definite result in terms of who has priority, the farmer or the small-scale miner, because sometimes the farmer will experience, you know, the small-scale concession holder turning up and saying, "Well, I've got a license for this piece of land to mine. I'll provide you compensation, but you have to move off." You know, does the farmer have the right to say, "Well, you know, stuff your compensation. This is my land. I'm going to stay on it." It appears not in most cases. So there seems to be sort of legal ambiguity there in terms of who had the sort of the priority rights over the land, the farmer or the small scale concession holder. Poverty or greed? I mean, I think that small scale mining continues to be largely driven by poverty. I mean, I pointed out that small scale mining has become big business for some, for a few, for those at the sort of the apex, in particular for concession holders who are either sort of, particularly those we saw who were either working with the Chinese or had adopted the methods and the practices that Chinese miners had introduced. So they have a capacity to make a lot of money, but you know the majority of small-scale miners were still including sort of women and children who were doing the poli, who were just trying to get, using traditional methods to get sort of scraps of gold, remnants of gold from the leftovers after the particular pit had been abandoned, and they are certainly still driven by poverty.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming. This is not the end of it all. Obviously, there are a lot of researchable issues in the area of mining in general in Ghana, and then small-scale mining in particular. And it actually delights me from the point of view of an IGC official when a policymaker can say that researchers should hurry up with their results because they may need to consider it for their law. I'm really happy by that, and I will urge our researchers to please take advantage of it. Liaise with us at the IGC offices, and let's see if we can get the policymakers to look at some of the results and see how they can implement them. I would say that it is also important because of the policy impact that we needed on some of these researches, that a lot of the analysis should take into consideration the political economy of situations and not just the more academic side of things. In other words, the feelings of the people, the political climate, and like, for instance, if you're mentioning about how Nkrumah was able to change certain things and take powers from the chiefs, that was in an autocratic era. The J.J. Rawlings also managed to change things. That was again in another autocratic era. Now, in this pluralistic government that we've had from 1992, it's not easy to be overriding chiefs just like that. You've got to really make sure that things go through the parliamentary process before you can get things done. So it has a weakness. It's a weakness. But you are in that regime now, so you got to do things to make sure that you are following the rules that you yourself have laid down and not, circumvent the rules. With that, I end the session, and I thank you all for coming and participating.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ask him to input into the mining law records.
Exactly. And then the other guy, he wants to see Professor Paul, if he's still around. Paul also expressed, Paul wrote that he wants to see.
Oh yes, this is the guy.
So if he's still around, I'm going to write a report so you can see if he's still around and show him.
Yeah, let me bring him. Yeah.
If he's not,
Actually
meeting
tonight.
is tomorrow.
Yeah. But tonight the public lecture, Paul Collier is speaking.
Okay.
So maybe after the public lecture that would be the easiest place to catch him, because right now it's quite difficult to
Getting ready.
Yeah. So maybe catch him then. Maybe tell him, yeah. It will download all my.
So where are we?
So we need to start Hangout and Chrome.
Have you downloaded it?
No, I tried, and then it asked me for administrator. So I guess it will be here.
Oh, click here to be.
So let me get the other person. So it's that and they find that. Back to them.
Oh, come on. It's not allowing me to log on. Oh, that's why. Doing my editing now. It's not allowing me. It's in the it won't let me do it because this person's logged in. And the only way of doing it would be to kick him out.
But we can take them out.
Huh?
We can take that person out.
Can we?
Yes.
I think it's fine to log out.
It's okay to log out, yeah? finance.
But
The finance are using next door tonight, yeah. That's all right, mate, it's all right. I think you have to log in to get WhatsApp.
together on Hangout?
Yeah. I think you have to.
So, okay, seems like I have it. I have it, yeah.
There should be somewhere where you can, there's apps. Where are we?
You need to be able to. now
There's supposed to be an app somewhere.
but it seems like if I go to the email,
You might be lonely. Finish?
okay.
Okay, now, I think it's up here. Ah, there it is.
Hangouts, okay. And now,
We need to go now to,
oh, now I guess I just go to start a conversation.
with any one of these.
No. These
No.
are a friend of mine.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, well yeah, but she doesn't know I'm connecting her to a...
Okay.
Oh, so, oh yeah, I guess here I need to... She doesn't know. She might not be happy about being...
She might not be. She might not be happy. You think not?
She might be.
You woke me up. You woke me up.
No, she'll be like, what? But well, it seems to be...
It does. We're in this administrator at the moment. But that shouldn't be a problem. The moment you log up.
Do we have Skype here?
Yeah. So you go all programs. Not on here, no. What we have to do is we would have to go to, oh, there's Skype. Yeah. So if you click on that, then this would come up.
Yeah.
And then you just click on it, and then it will start.
Okay. So,
Yeah?
yeah. So if I connect to...
But remembering that what you're doing now, you won't be able to do with, because I've logged on as administrator to download this.
So it won't stay as... It won't stay installed?
It will stay. It will stay. Because we've downloaded it, and it's installed. It will be on.
Okay.
So there should be a problem.
So if I log in and
If we log in as yourselves,
yeah.
so we can hang up.
Should we log out my email?
Yeah. Where are we? Come on, we should be able to.
I guess. Here?
I think you got to go to your name. Yeah, I think it's there. That's it there.
Yeah. So if I log in as me.
So close that. Close. Cancel that. And now log off. Yeah. And now. It didn't do anything. I don't think the num lock's on. That's it.
I'm worried about all my stuff. Let me get it from the...
Okay. Right, I'm going to have to leave you because we've got a public lecture I'm trying to help set up, yeah? But it should be on there, Google Chrome. Once you get on, you just log on as normal.
Okay.
Log on to your Google account.
Okay.
And then just go through exactly the same what you just did before.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah?
So I should have it here. I'm going to test it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
And then for Skype, it's exactly the same. Start all programs, and it should be down the drop down. You see Skype, open up the folder, press select, and it will run Skype. You'll see it downloading, and it will start. Yeah? It's just loading up your profile now.
Okay, but tomorrow it won't.
Yeah, tomorrow it'll be flying through.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But what time are you in here tomorrow?
It depends on whether there is another session tomorrow. Yeah.
We have someone here from 7, so.
Okay, okay. But that session is at 3:30.
Oh yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be
Okay,
fine.
okay,
Yeah?
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
You see that I have talked to you? After years trying, several years trying to get you. It seems a publication online. I couldn't get the picture. I can't get the picture from any good. Yes, I saw that. In fact, this is the reason why I also just do, like, this is the reason why I put this picture up. So if you get it, I think it's something as well that I can support. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yep. We're figuring out this. This is supposed to be live download. It's taking. She's in another phone call.
So you see what I tell you about Google. Even when there's a problem, you sort it alone. It's not like she's not part of the country team. She is, and it goes like this.
What is she?
I don't know. She's gone. So you run around alone, you do this alone, and she'll just come and sit.
This is exactly. Oh, you saw independence why everything gets delayed.
Exactly. And when you come to London, those are things you talk to people about.
Yeah,
you
people
tell
tell
them.
me because we can have food in like 10 different hotspots during the days. And sometimes
To the same issue.
Yeah, so same issue.
Anyway, so has the guy done the settings for you?
Hmm?
The hand, whatever you are calling it.
That's what we're trying to sort out.
Okay.
This is supposed to be
Is it installing or something? Oh, right.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, Manuel. Sorry. Sorry, I'm doing a testing. Never send me this link.
Hello?